So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your piece of fabric that I gave you and you're going to fold it over in half. Okay? Try to make it as even as possible, but put 2 pins in to keep it in place. At least 2, maybe even 3. If the edges are not perfectly even, like this isn't, you're going to just trim them up quick with the shears that are in your bucket. So you don't want to take a lot off of it, but you just want to make it so that it's nice clean cuts now, and it'll be easier to sew once the edges are even. Just as best you can. Alright, so now you're going to put your fabric in the machine, and we're doing 2 stitches. One's a straight stitch and one is a pivot stitch. So I'm going to do the straight stitch first. It doesn't really matter where you start necessarily, what edge you start on, the left or the right, but I'm going to just start on the right. And you're going to line up the edge of your presser foot with the edge of the fabric the whole time. So that's the goal, is to keep that stitch straight. If you watch the needle go up and down, your stitch is going to start to be wavy, okay, back and forth. If you're watching the edge of the presser foot with the edge of the fabric the whole time, your stitch is going to be exactly the same amount from the edge. So I'll show you what this looks like. So we always start with our needle and our presser foot down. I'm going to turn on my light. We're going to start to move forward. We're going to do a back stitch at the beginning. We're going to do our back stitch at the beginning, 3 or 4 forward. And now you're going to click and hold the reverse and go 3 or 4 backward. You let go. Now, when I'm starting to sew here, I don't really have to do a lot with my hands, but the goal is to get my presser foot in line with the edge of the fabric the whole time down. So if I'm watching that and I'm adjusting a little left, a little right with my fingers, I'm going to make sure that the stitch is exactly the same amount. Okay? When I get to the bottom, I don't want to run off the edge, but I want to stop maybe 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and I'll do my back stitch. Now let's inspect it and look and see what it looks like. And for the most part, my stitch is exactly the same from the edge all the way down the whole thing. Okay, now I'm going to show you this with a pivot, and I'm going to start on this edge. I'm going to move my pin out of the way. Maybe I'll start right about here. Okay, you're not joining these 2 stitches or anything. You're just showing me that you know how to do both of these stitches. So when I start, I'm going to just start right here, but again, making sure my presser foot's on the edge the whole time. Okay, so I'm watching this. I'm going to start with my needle down, and I'm going to go 3 or 4 forward, click and hold the reverse, go 3 or 4 backward, and let go and start to go forward. Now when I get close to this pin, not on top of it where I'm hitting it, but close enough, like I am right now, I'm going to slip that pin out, because you don't want to run over the pins. Okay? I'm always, again, watching the edge of the fabric with the edge of the presser foot. I'm going to keep going down, and I'm going to show you what to do when you get to the corner. Okay, so I'm in the corner, and I want to make sure that when I go to turn to do my pivot, we know that our presser foot is still on the edge. So let's say I think this is a good spot to pivot. I'm going to take my needle and put it all the way down with my hand wheel. I lift up my presser foot, and I turn. Now, you can see that that is not even. Okay. You can see that that's not even with the edge, right? So that wouldn't be a good spot to start my pivot. So to fix that, I need to go a couple more stitches forward. So I'm going to spin it back, because spinning it is not doing anything to hurt it. So it's fine if you have to adjust and spin it back. And let's say I only want to go 2 or 3 more stitches. I can use my hand wheel to manually do that. So I'm just going to crank my hand wheel until I go 2 more stitches, put my needle down, and try again. Move my presser foot, right, or move my fabric over, and look, now I'm back on the edge again. That's where I want to be. That's my good spot to pivot. Now I'm going to come down here, and when I get to the end, okay, so we left our needle down in the fabric, lifted up our presser foot to pivot. Now when I get to the end over here, that's where I want to end my stitch, so I'm going to do my back stitch. Back stitch 3 or 4 backwards right here, 3 or 4 forwards. And now I am finished. And the reason that it looks so perfect and my measurement's so perfect from the edge is because my presser foot was always being left on the edge of the fabric. And now this is called a seam allowance. My seam allowance is the same all the way around. And that is all you're doing for your quiz.